If you're broke, this is why, because you're ignoring this one thing. Now, you've probably heard this saying, your network is your net worth. I think that's BS. Here's why. See, everyone says it, but no one really breaks down how it works. Most people are just kind of networking sideways, talking to broke people in nice suits. The real wealth jumps when you network upwards and across industries, not just inside an echo chamber. When I started finding people who are outside of my industry, maybe they're in private equity, maybe they're into buying and building hotels, maybe they are into launching their own tokenomics system. When I hang around these people, I start to get more ideas on what to do and what not to do. And it kind of opens up the world. You see, when you speak to somebody, their world opens up and you start to understand. It's what I call the BST, which is your belief system transference. That's really what BS stands for. It doesn't stand for the word you're thinking about. It stands for your belief system. And so the key here is to transfer your belief system from one person to another. When you're networking sideways, you're getting the same belief system. But when you're networking upwards, you're getting different belief systems. I remember the first time I sat next to this amazing entrepreneur who was kind of telling me, and this is how I kind of got started in property, where he said that, John, you can go out there and you can find deals which are below the market value. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, there are people out there whose property is worth £1 million, but they'll sell it to you at a £200,000 discount. For a while, I thought, that sounds too good to be true. But again, when I'm networking sideways, it is too good to be true. When I'm networking upwards, then that's just their reality. That's their belief system. So their belief system states that you can find deals that are below its market value. Therefore, I look for them. And if I search for them, then I find it. Money moves through people, not platforms. AI won't get you rich. Social media won't make you rich, but the right person using AI, the right person using social media can change your bank account overnight. So don't chase the tools. Chase distribution through people who already have what you want. So when I start hanging around with people in real estate, I start buying more real estate. When I start hanging around more people who are into Web3, I start buying more Web3. When I start hanging around more people who are into artificial intelligence and technology, I start getting more AI and more investments in that. But what I realized is it takes one person to introduce to somebody else, and that's what really makes you successful. It takes one relationship and one deal for your business to blow up. I'll give an example. I partnered with one of these huge platforms called Mindvalley, and Vision's a good friend of mine. What I realized is that one connection, that one deal has massively, tremendously grown my business, which has then resulted into millions of dollars. Why? Because it's moving through people, not platforms. It's when you have that contact. It's when that person gets invited onto Oprah and you have that Oprah effect, and that Oprah effect then makes that person famous and they have massive distribution. You're one DM away from everything changing. You know, I sent a message to someone and I thought they would never reply. Conversation became a $500,000 to $1 million partnership. See, most people are kind of lurking instead of connecting. That's the problem. You really need to make an effort. And as I mentioned, this is one of the reasons why I fly all the way halfway across around the world just to have a meeting and then fly back, because that one meeting can save you so much time. But what's stopping you from reaching out to 10 people a day? If you reach out to 10 people a day, and again, if you do some calculations on that, right? Just 10 people a day. 10, and then you do that every single day. That means you reach out to 3,650 people. And if you just work with 10% of that, that means you have 365 partners. And if each partner can make you an average of, let's say, $25,000, then that's an extra 9 million. You see how that works? People talk about referral systems. I think referral systems are great, but you got to make the effort. When you make the effort, you also have to create something called a strategic alliance. You have to make it a win-win-win, not a win-win-lose or a win-lose-lose or a lose-lose-lose. Networking is not what you think. It's not small talk. You see, effective networking isn't just going around and handing out cards. I mean, how many times have you been handed cards at a networking event? You take the cards and you throw them in the bin, or you put them in a drawer and you never go through them again. It's actually solving real problems for powerful people. No pitch, no agenda, just help. And this is one thing that I've really led my life with over the last 20 years plus now of being in business, is to leave people with more value than I met them with. 3 simple questions you can ask. What is your focus right now? Second question is, based on the focus that you're doing right now, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges that you're having right now? 3 is, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you love to have happen in that situation? And they'll tell you. That's how you get remembered and invited. This is why a lot of celebrities, I have a lot of big celebrities that follow me on social, they'll send me a DM and be like, hey John, I would love to do something with you. Can we work together? They'll invite me around to their mansions and I'll sit down with them and I'll say those three things. What are you focused on right now? What are the biggest challenges? If you could wave a magic wand, what would you like to happen as the end result? Networking is not, hey, how you doing? What's the weather like? It's not small talk, it's solving problems. And I think when we look at unlocking money, we have to unlock problems. You want to become a millionaire, help a million people. You want to become a billionaire, help a billion people. We need to find the problems and we need to solve them. This is why critical thinking, and if you want to unlock money, you need to unlock your brain to possibilities that are possible. There's this thing called the $100,000 room test. If people around you wouldn't pay you $100,000 to be in that room, you're probably in the wrong room, right? You want to upgrade your circle and then your ceiling explodes. It's not motivation, that's just math. This is why if you look at the Rolls Royce, you very rarely see, if any, a Rolls Royce advert, right? But if you ever go to buy a private jet, you'll always see Rolls Royce being advertised next to a private jet. Why is that? Well, because it's a law of association. Okay, if you want to buy a private jet for 50 million and then, okay, well, the car is only $500,000, then it seems like a very cheap deal. So it's comparison. The key to this is to make sure that you're hanging around people who can solve a problem, because I'll give you a classic example of this. So one thing I used to do in the past is to teach people how to speak on stage, to communicate, and to get their message across, which would inspire people. That's not motivation, that's math. If I hang around people who are billionaires, right? They have billionaire problems, but yet millionaires can solve that problem. So when you solve that issue, what happens is you start to get a much bigger return on investment, because it's all about finding out what that problem is and then solving it, right? So again, I used to teach people how to speak on stage and how to communicate and how to tell stories and how to captivate the audience. But the same skill set applied to entrepreneurs that were raising money in one pitch using the same skill set can raise millions and millions and millions of pounds for their startup. So the key to this is to really understand what is the big problems you can solve for big people. And really the power of what I call power of network stacking. Don't just meet people, stack your relationships. Introduce two valuable people to each other with no expectation. Here's the thing, you say, well, John, if I asked a question, what are your challenges right now if you're with Magic One? If you can't solve that problem, but you know somebody who can, then you can make those connections together. Many times I've connected a lot of people together and they have made a lot of money. In fact, a lot of the in-person events that I run all around the world, when I do a lot of keynotes, sometimes we'll run sort of focused strategic sessions, accelerators, or what we called masterminding. And we get a lot of partners who attend and then they meet, they become friends, they become founders together, and then they start a business, and that's what we call real connections. And so you also want to use software and AI that can help you do that. If you look at your phone, how many contacts do you have right now? Some of you hundreds, some of you thousands. But what if you could use artificial intelligence to be able to remind you to reach out to that person, to have that conversation, to remember those people's birthdays? You're not going to remember thousands of people's birthdays. In fact, how many telephone numbers do you remember now compared to what you used to 10 years ago? So let technology do the work and let that help you in this process. You got to burn that elevator pitch and do this instead. See, no one cares what you do. They care what you can do for them. One thing I learned in university is this concept of WIFT, what's in it for them. And it's funny because I went to a university where I didn't really learn that much. And to be very transparent, I hardly had any lessons when I went to that university. But I tell you, one of the most powerful lessons in the handful of lessons I had there was to be able to make sure that I was able to understand the concept of they care what you can do for them. I can help you do XYZ pitch. Say this instead. I solve problems that cost people 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 a day. Want one fixed? Like, for example, I get a lot of people that say to me, John, this AI thing, and I don't really understand it. I'm not really a techie, even though you can press a button and get things done for you. Here's what I found. Even though people know what to do, they still don't do it. And even though people know what to do, they don't have time to implement it. What I say is, well, I have a consulting firm that can actually do that for you. Would you like one of my guys to come in, number one, give you an audit, number two, tell you how to fix it, number three, do it for you? And they say, of course. That's how we are able to create multi-million-dollar companies, not just because we want to sell things, we want to solve big problems and spend a lot of time figuring out how to solve those problems and really have a team of people who really want to work with you and partner with you in that. The hard harsh truth about why you're not invited is because people don't invite you to the table because they don't feel like you belong there. You're not adding any value. And it sounds bad. You have to fix the perception and you'll never eat lunch alone again, right? People invite people because there's value, right? They're gonna get something, they're gonna learn something. Like every time I meet people, and let's say I meet them 1 month, I don't see them for 6 months, I meet them 6 months and I'm talking about all this new stuff because, 6 months for me in terms of the speed to market and the speed of implementation is almost like 6 years worth, because it's advancing so fast. And so a lot of people, they invite me because they want to know, John, what's the new updates? What can I do differently? How's the market changed? What's the biggest things that's going to come and disrupt me right now? And so I can tell them, I can say, look, this is where it is. These are some of the things you want to be in. These are things you want to consider. That's why if you're like, well, John, I don't get invited to this stuff, because you're not adding any value. And sometimes when you add value, you shouldn't expect anything in return. And you know what happens? People remember that. Unfortunately, in this world, I get people sometimes that reach out to me, I've never heard from them for like years, and they reach out because they want something. Well, how about if you know that something's coming, that you want to add value to these people all the time so you can really start to grow and scale. You see, this is how rich people network, and it's actually ruthless. They don't chit chat, they don't ask for LinkedIn's, they talk offers, leverage, timing, and exit. Learn the language or stay broke trying to speak yours. A lot of the successful people, sometimes it's kind of like we sit down, hey bro, how's it going? Yeah, anyway, what are you working on? Because they don't want to waste time, because time's important to them. If you go to meet people, like sometimes it is pretty crazy. I'll do like back-to-back meetings because I know that meeting that I take, it builds relationship. It builds what I call relationship capital. We have put something into it where that person appreciates it, they like it, they go, yep, this is great, I can do something. And then they might call you back and say, hey, quite often they'll say, hey, John, you know that thing you talked about? Can you give me some more pointers on that? And I would say to them, and they say, you know what? Have you just got someone who can do this? Well, yeah, we've got one of our consultants who can do this for you. The future of wealth is trapped in someone else's contacts. The shortcut isn't really working harder. It's getting someone else to vouch for you that unlocks the rooms, unlocks deals, and checks that you can't even imagine right now. Think about this. If I try and speak to someone who's very like a massive celebrity and I try and get in the front door, it's not going to work. But if it comes through somebody else, then it's a much easier win. Let me give you a good example of this. Many years ago, I heard about this promoter, his name was Brian, and he's running these massive events, like 100,000 people. And I was like, oh my God, I'd love to speak in front of 100,000 people. And so when I looked at the speaker roster, I looked at who was there, and I saw a friend of mine, Darren. I've known Darren for over a decade. And all I had to do was say, Darren, I see that you're speaking at this big event. I was wondering if you would be able to send an email, make an introduction, and recommend me, because I've spoken at some of your events, you've spoken at some of my events, we've known each other for a long time now. And he said, absolutely. Why? Because I added so much value. That one email got me a phone call with someone called Lisa, who was able to make the call, then put me in touch with another person who I had the call with, and that's how I got onto the speaker event. I tell you, that partnership's made me millions from that one email, from the one contact that I had, from the value that I'd added to that person. Darren would often call me up, hey John, I've seen you on social media, you've got all these millions of people following you. Like, how do you create content? How do you make these posts? How do you even come up with the ideas? So I was coaching him and his team and giving a lot of value. Not even that, there was another promoter, this other promoter that said, John, I need a lot of help. Can you come down and train my sales team? So I would go down, I'll go to the office, I'd train the entire team, and they would remember that. And then when they look for a speaker, then they would actually ask me to do it. And of course, when I speak on stage, when I finish off stage, I always talk about technologies, I talk about what's going to really come in the future of business and how we market, how we grow and scale our businesses. Inevitably, I would get people reach out to me and say, all the things you were talking about, can you do it for me? And so that's how we get our business. So these are some of the things that you've really got to start thinking about if you really want to become successful and if you want to unlock money. And by the way, if you've enjoyed this video, what I'd love for you to do is, if you have any questions, first of all, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment below with any questions you've got, and I'll be creating more and more content on how we can really grow and scale to the next level. Other than that, make sure you check out this video here as well.